Did you know that this Christmas special actually set up the Human Nature and Family Blood two-parter story? Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin, I'm a geek. You are watching Kevin the Geek and welcome back to a Doctor Who review. This is the mid-series 7 Christmas special, The Snowmen. And it is, of course, the episode that sets up the whole Impossible Girl storyline with Clara Oswald.
Clara who?
Doctor Who.
Oh, dangerous question.
What's wrong with dangerous?
A storyline which is safe to say is hit and miss with some fans as to whether they like it or whether they don't like it. But watching this episode for actually the second time, because it's the second time that I'm making this video recording, because my original recording, it was corrupted, so I'm having to re-record it again. But rewatching it this second time, I actually picked up on more stuff, which has led me to create a theory of how this episode will relate to the episode which is set about 20 or so years after this episode, which was the episode all the way back in Series 3, the story of Human Nature and the Family of Blood, which, if you don't remember, was the episode where the 10th Doctor became human to try and avoid the titular family from stealing his Time Lord consciousness. And I'm quite proud of this theory, and I will come back to it a little bit later on. But I, of course, need to talk about the episode as a whole. Let's get started with that, and I'll come back to that theory in a moment. Of course, if you are new, do please consider subscribing to the channel, turning on notifications, dropping your comments down below. And, of course, if you want early access for my videos, then you can do so by heading over and joining the Patreon.
Snow that can remember. That's silly.
What's wrong with silly?
Nothing. Still talking to you, ain't I?
The story itself is fine. It's not especially groundbreaking. It's the Doctor, there is a villain, he tries to save the day. That's pretty much it. But there is a lot of setup. A lot of setup for future episodes, future storylines.
Run, you clever boy. And remember.
To the point that I don't really think we've ever had that in a Christmas episode of Doctor Who prior. The closest you could potentially argue would be the second Christmas special, which was The Runaway Bride, which of course set up Donna Noble. It wasn't intended at the time to set up Donna Noble and her character and her amazing arc, but it did. And of course, in a way, it sort of set up the Series 4 episode Turn Left as well, which was a alternate future what if style storyline, which developed from the actions of that episode and what if things had changed, which then led to events of that episode kind of not happening. So yeah, other than that one episode, none of the others have really set anything up. Obviously, the Christmas Invasion, in a way, that just kind of set up the dynamic between the 10th Doctor and Rose, but not to any great lengths. Voyage of the Damned, it was a traditional Christmas episode based on the Siege kind of thing. Then you had the next Doctor, which, again, you know, it teased the potential, but it didn't follow through with it, which I still think is a bit of a shame. Then you had The End of Time, which was just more of a regeneration style one. And then, of course, you had the two previous ones, which come in the Stephen Moffat era. You had The Christmas Carol and The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. Of course, the Christmas Carol episode, great episode. And, of course, it featured Michael Gambon, well, he ended up being one of two very big name former wizards to appear in Doctor Who, because, of course, in this episode, we feature, of course, the wonderful Sir Ian McKellan, who played the voice of the Great Intelligence in this episode.
The Great Swarm is approaching. As humanity celebrates, so shall it end.
And Michael Gambon in A Christmas Carol was fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. In this one, I can't help but feel that Ian McKellan was underutilized. You know, he has got a very distinctive voice and a very powerful voice, and one that really makes you want to listen to it. You know, anything that he says, you really do pay attention to. But I just think a man of that magnitude, he feels very similar for me to Michael Sheen, who of course also did a voice role in Doctor Who in Series 6 in The Doctor's Wife. That one, I would say, is a little bit lesser in a way, because it wouldn't be as easy to tell that that was Michael Sheen, whereas in this, it's very clear it is Ian McKellan. So yeah, I just feel that he was a little bit underused, but of course he did have his alternative villain in this, in Richard E. Grant, who of course plays the Dr. Simeon character, and later on goes on to play the physical embodiment of the Great Intelligence later on in Series 7, which of course I will get to those episodes and talk about him a bit more when it comes to those. In this, he's just a man. He's just a man, that's it.
Pond is yours, Captain Latimer. But what is growing inside it, when it is ready, is ours.
He did have one kind of evil moment, if you like, which was right near the start, where of course, you have the workers, and they're like, "Oh, can you give me some food? You said you were going to feed us," and he's like,
I said I'd feed you. I didn't say who to.
It did feel quite pantomime-y, that line, I'm not going to lie, but the dialogue for the rest of the episode, I really liked.
Give me a message for the Doctor. Tell him all about the snow and what fresh danger you believe it presents. And above all, explain why he should help you. But do it in one word.
In particular, the one-word test, which is something I think was very well used in this episode. It is something that feels like that should be used more. And I like the idea that when you use words, and you use many words, those words, in a way, are a way of hiding lies. And only using one word to give you an answer means you have to be much more precise in what you say to get your message across and be really truthful, which is something I would say that I struggle with from time to time. I do waffle at times, so apologies if you think I am a waffler.
Over 1,000 years of saving the universe, Drax. You know the one thing I learned? The universe doesn't care.
Now, I do really like the Doctor's storyline in this. The fact that coming on from the events of The Angels Take Manhattan, which of course is the episode where we lost Amy and Rory. This is really only the second time, I would say, that we've really shown the Doctor trying to move on after the big loss of a companion. And this will be the second time after Donna Noble, because of course we had the 4 special stories, or 5 technically, after Series 4. You had The Next Doctor, you had The Planet of the Dead, you had The Waters of Mars, and of course you had The End of Time. So they were good, and particularly in The Waters of Mars, that showed really how far the Doctor can fall after the loss of companion, when he is on his own, and that he needs people around him. And it shows it in this episode as well, the fact that you have the Paternoster gang, as they like to be called. This is actually only their second appearance, but this is the first appearance of a few episodes. When I was looking up to this, I thought they were in more episodes than I thought. Maybe it was because they were in such a big part of Series 7. But then it was only really then, I think it was the first episode with Peter Capaldi, and then they never really appeared again. I like them as a group. I don't think I necessarily like them individually. I mean, Strax.
Do not attempt to escape, or you will be obliterated. May I take your coat?
They obviously brought him in to be a light comic relief in A Good Man Goes to War, which of course is where all 3 of them were first introduced. And I was very surprised to see Strax in this one, because I remembered that Strax had died. And it turned out, prior to this, there was a sort of mini kind of prequel episode to this, which was only a couple of minutes long, and that basically showed how Strax was actually not dead as a result of the events of A Good Man Goes to War. It's a bit wishy-washy. I think the circumstances in which they bring him back, and particularly after rewatching this one again for the second time for doing this one, I was thinking a bit more, and I was listening to the line where they're saying that
That equipment will bring back anyone for a while.
this technology can bring them back, but only temporarily, which makes me think Strax surely then isn't going to be alive forever. He will eventually at some point, I don't know, like run out of batteries, if that's a bad way of explaining it, but I hope you get what I'm kind of saying with that. He will eventually just die. The technology's effect on him will eventually run out, and he will die, presumably of the wounds that were caused as a result of A Good Man Goes to War. They really hammered up a lot more in this particular episode, the comedy in which he does, and the misinterpretation, you know, things like, you know, misgendering someone and...
Silence, boy!
That's Strax, and as you can see, he's easily confused.
Silence, girl!
And having that sort of Sontaran kind of mentality still within him, but also then, you know, that he's trying to help as a result of whatever it is that has made him be in the way that he is. It is funny to a point, but there is definitely the point where you're like, okay, we've got the joke, but we're hamming it hard a little bit too much now. You know, I don't particularly like. I mean, I like it as a general idea, but you've got to know where to draw the line, I think, and where you go, right now you're pushing it a little bit too much, and they did to a certain degree push it a little bit too much in this episode.
I suggest a full frontal assault with automated laser monkeys, scalpel mines, and acid.
Why?
Couldn't we at least investigate?
As for Vastra and for Jenny, I like them, and it always baffled me. I was always thinking that when do they actually mention that they're married? Because I always read it was like they talk about they're married, but I couldn't remember any episode in which it was actually explicitly mentioned. And it does turn out it is this episode. And I like the fact that they don't make a big deal about it. You know, it's a lizard woman and her wife. That's it. There you go. That's it. Don't need to make a big deal about it. It's just, that is what it is.
I resent your implication of impropriety. We are married.
More than can be said for you, eh, dear?
As for Clara. Clara.
After you.
After you.
After you. I'm wearing a dress, eyes front, soldier.
My eyes are always front.
Mine on.
On one of the Facebook groups I'm part of, like a Doctor Who fan group, one thing that was put on this week is what is something that Doctor Who hasn't done that you would like to see happen in the future. And this is a great example that I always use about something I would really like to see with Doctor Who. One of them, you know, not related to this, but one of them is, one of these days I would like to see a regeneration where we don't know that the Doctor's going to regenerate. It hasn't been announced who's going to replace the Doctor, who's going to be the replacement performer. That would be wonderful if we could have that. Like, can you imagine if Jodie Whittaker... I mean, actually, yeah, we kind of technically did get that, didn't we? With Jodie Whittaker into David Tennant, because Jodie Whittaker was announced that she was leaving, and then Ncuti Gatwa was announced as being the next Doctor. And yeah, it was a bit of a surprise that David Tennant came in and was the 14th Doctor. But other than that, I think as an actual, like, proper Doctor, like, if it'd gone from Jodie Whittaker to Ncuti Gatwa, we didn't know Ncuti Gatwa was cast, and it happened, that would have been amazing. For me, personally. Other people may disagree. I would have loved that. But the one thing I did say related to this episode that I would like to see is I would really like to see a historical companion. You don't need, in my personal view, to have a modern day companion. We've had that with every companion in the new generation. From Rose, Martha, Donna, Amy and Rory, Clara, when we get her in the next episode. You know, Bill when she comes in. You know, Yaz and the rest of the gang, and Dan and all those, and then of course Ruby in the newest series. All of them are modern day companions. Do you need to have someone from the modern day? I personally think you don't. I think you can get all of the benefits that you're looking for a companion from someone who's not of modern day, who's Victorian, who may be from the Middle Ages, who could be a caveman to a certain degree, because the main role of a companion is to be an audience surrogate, is to ask the questions that the audience are going to be asking. Do they have to be modern day to be able to ask those same questions? Of course not. You know, so when Clara came in this, obviously Jenna-Louise had already been announced that she was going to be the new companion. So she'd appeared in Asylum of the Daleks as Oswin. She comes in this, and of course anyone who's watching this who knows of the casting announcements think that this is going to be the new companion. So it is a clever twist to pull it out the rug from under us and her die by the end of the episode, and to set up this whole mystery, you know, the impossible girl. We've had two variations of the same person, both of them have died. What does this mean? It is a very intriguing concept. How it comes to play out, I will talk about that in the future. But for right now, it is a good rug twist, but I loved her character.
You're going to have to take those clothes off. I didn't mean...
I love this version of Clara. I think the Clara that we eventually get, I think how we see her with the 12th Doctor, with Peter Capaldi, I think that version becomes more what I wanted to see and what we got with this version of Clara, more so than the Clara that we got with the 11th Doctor and Matt Smith. Again, I'll talk more about that when we get into the episodes as a whole, you know, as I continue. Obviously, that'll be in the new year, because of next month, of course, I'm pausing things for the Christmas month. But I will be doing a reaction to the latest Doctor Who episode, the Christmas special, which, of course, is, again, penned by Stephen Moffat. And if you haven't seen the rest of them, I did reactions to the 60th anniversary specials last year, and all the episodes for the first series with Shooting Together. So go ahead and check those out if you haven't seen them. But yeah, Clara in this iteration, she was sassy, she was flirty, she was smart. Most importantly, I think that she was a great version to have, and she asked the right questions, and especially that one word test. I thought she was fantastic, and the writing for that was beautiful. Now, I wanted to talk how this episode links back to Human Nature and Family of Blood. Now, if you are new to the way that I do my Doctor Who reviews, of course I give every category a score out of 10 to give an overall score out of 100. That helps me with rankings. And one of those categories is to do with the set. And so when I'm looking at a video, I like to look at the set, and I like to see how it ties in and how well it's utilised, and how well it looks to the time period and what you're doing it. And as I was watching this one, particularly it was the scene when they're on the staircase and the ice governess is kind of at the top. I was looking at the scene, I was thinking, this set seems really familiar. And I couldn't work out initially where I thought I knew it from. And then it suddenly clicked in my head. I went back, I re-looked at the episode Human Nature and Family of Blood. And if you look at the staircase that is in that, you can see on the sort of the end parts of it, the little kind of bulbous bit that's sticking up on the end of the banister, it is literally the same one. So clearly the same house or the same interior was used for this episode and for that one. Now, I do also have that theory, which has developed because as I was watching that one, I then thought, the owner of the house is Captain Latimer, and you have his son Digby Latimer in this episode. I was thinking, Latimer, that rings a bell. And I went back, I looked up the cast list and everything for that episode for Human Nature and Family of Blood, and Tim in that episode, the one who steals the Doctor's watch and opens it and is running around, he has these kind of psychic visions and stuff, his name is Tim Latimer. And this episode is set, that episode is set 21 years after the events of this episode, as noted by the date, which is on the gravestone that you see right at the end for Clara. And that got me thinking, could this house be the house that is actually then eventually becomes the school that you see in the Human Nature and the Family of Blood episode? I like to think that it does. So if you think about the time frame, 21 years, that would probably leave enough time for Digby Latimer, who's a kid in this one, to have a son called Tim. This is where it really gets really interesting. I'm really proud of this theory, I have to admit. So because of all the psychic nature with the snow and the ice and everything with this one, that is what makes me think that that's why Tim in that episode has a bit more of that psychic ability. Yes, it does get linked to the Chameleon Arch, the Fob Watch, that is in that episode. But that, I think, is where that kind of ties in. It's that sort of family link. So it is a bit of an out there theory, but I think that that's what works. So I think, obviously, in this, it's called, I think it's called Darkover House. And I like to think that because of the events of this episode, and because of the events, of course, with the previous governess, the one who died, I like to think that they've changed the name of it. They don't want it to be associated. So they change it to Farringham. It's the Farringham School for Boys. That's what it becomes. Now, there is no Farringham village in real life in the UK, but there is a Farningham, so literally one letter difference, and that is a little village which is on the outskirts of London. So geographically, it all links up together as well. So let me know, do you agree with my theory there? Do you think I'm a little bit off there? Have I got a little bit away from it there? I like that as a theory. I think that's quite cool as an idea, that it later becomes that school, and then of course it leads to all the events of that one. So yeah, that is my theoretical link there. But yeah, I think overall, this is a very well-crafted episode. And it feels an episode of Doctor Who more so than a Christmas special. Which I do quite like. I don't mind, having episodes like the previous Christmas special, the Doctor, the Widow and the Wardrobe, where you can think, yeah, it's just a one-off. You don't have to think too in-depthly with it. You can have a bit of fun with it. Sometimes it's nice to have something that's Christmassy, but also has kind of stakes attached to it. That's the way I feel. So yeah, that is my thoughts with this episode. I thought the Doctor was great. I thought Clara was amazing. The supporting cast were great. The villain, yeah, it felt so much more of a setup than anything else. It did a reasonable job in what it needs to do with the villain, with the great intelligence. It is a little bit surprising that the Doctor doesn't remember the events, which of course happened. I think, from my memory, am I reading up? I think it was the second Doctor was the one who originally had the episodes with the great intelligence. I haven't seen them, but I know that there's two, if I remember correctly, and both of them sort of feature the abominable snowman or the Yeti, which is kind of what it links into with this one. And of course, it brings in that little nod. So for any long-term fans of it, it's a simple little nod where the crystals get put in the tin sort of lunchbox for the London Underground, and you make an off-the-cuff comment going, yeah, this could be a strategic weakness, which does lead into those episodes. So yeah, it makes sense from a narrative point of view. It doesn't take too much away if you haven't seen them. I mean, I only really know that through a lot of background reading. I do want to go properly through and watch all of Classic Who. I've watched the first two serials so far. Again, there are reactions available on the channel if you haven't seen them. But yeah, other than that, I think it was a solid episode. So, like I said, I give each episode a score. So these are my scores for the Snowmen. And so this episode has scored 80 marks out of 100, which makes it a B+ storyline. And it is the third highest Christmas special of the episodes that I have so far done reviews for. And I think maybe at some point, once I've done a few more of these, I will start to put together a ranking for Christmas specific stories. I've of course done rankings of the entirety of the original RTD era. I've done various rankings on the channel, which again I'm super proud of. I haven't done really that many for a while, probably actually I think since last November, so I need to go back and I need to do another one to kind of get me back into that. I've had a lot of theories in mind and ones I want to do, but I've run out of time to do them. So yeah, I'm going to leave this episode here. Of course, I will be back at some point in the new year to continue on with Series 7 of reviews. If you haven't seen the rest of them, my first videos on the channel was reviews, starting with the episode Rose. So you can go back and see all of my Doctor Who reviews from Rose all the way through. Of course, do bear in mind that those first episodes, they were when I was very new to my journey, so the quality of my content wasn't as as good as it is now. I still have a lot more ways that I can improve now, but of course, it is definitely better than it was. So just bear that in mind if you do go back and watch those earlier episodes. But yeah, otherwise, next month it is going to be a very solid Christmas reaction related month of loads of different stuff that I've been doing reactions to, loads of different shows, so feel free to check all the stuff out, subscribe if you're new, of course, consider joining the Patreon if you want to get early access and of course exclusive content as well. But until next time, thank you very much for watching, and my name is Kevin. I am a geek, and you've been watching Kevin the Geek. Goodbye.